Well, there we go. I forgot to start the sound again. Not a fun thing. Thanks for letting me know. There is that little thing that just has to happen, right? And now I got to get back to the Facebook feed where I can see what you're saying. And Facebook move things around so it doesn't go as easily as it used to. Come on. There we go. Okay, back. Thank you for letting me know. Let's put the theme back on there. Whoops. Nope. There we go. Nylon versus steel. What kind of strings do you prefer? This really is not a competition. Like one is going to win. It's just like we have a choice. And this comes from this past Sunday. I played at the church where I have a gig as an interim music director. And this was the day I took my mountain dulcimers. So for the prelude, I played with the mandolin player playing my Galax mountain dulcimer, which is all strung 4 equidistant strings, but all tuned to the same pitch, all tuned to a high D, like on the mountain dulcimer DAD. And all the strings are 0.010, or the short name is tens. And I played that. I played a medley of hymns or tunes and hymns for the beginning. And then for the offertory, I played my nylon string dulcimer. And so there were 2 very different takes. And people say, what was that instrument? I said, well, they were both dulcimers. And they said, well, they sounded very different. Yes. And I just wanted to talk about it. Raised, when I posted that, there were several questions came. Several builders said, I've tried that, or I want to try that. And so I wanted to tell you how I got there. When I got bit by the guitar bug in 1973, I was at a retreat for confirmation just before, it was beginning October, late September. It was right after Jim Croce and Maury Muhlheisen's plane had gone down in Louisiana. And there were 3 guitar players who were playing this intricate stuff. And I'd heard it all my life. I'd had kind of a passing interest once about wanting to play guitar, but it cemented then. I was bit. I just had to play guitar. My folks gave me a guitar for Christmas that year. It was a classical guitar. The guitars I was hearing were steel string guitars. And so I was not satisfied with the classical guitar. So I went to the music store as soon as it opened, which was many days later, because Christmas that year was on a weekend or something like that. So I got myself over to the music store, and I bought a set of steel strings. Now, there we go, confronted not only by things being out of tune, but by what gauge do I use. And I can't remember. I probably picked medium because it sounds like it's in the middle, and that's a good place to start. Well, when I put them on my nylon string guitar, I liked the sound I was getting. It was nice and clear. It sounded more like what I was used to hearing on the radio. But it didn't take long for the bridge to pull up on the guitar. It's like, uh-oh, I'm having trouble keeping this in tune, and the bridge is coming up. There's a gap that didn't used to be there. And I took it back to the place I bought the strings, and they said, well, you put steel strings on a nylon string guitar. They may as well said, you dummy. They didn't, but it was very dumb. But I didn't know. And I wanted the sound of steel strings, but my folks got me a nylon string guitar. So I immediately took the steel strings off, and I put nylon strings back on. The bridge relaxed and said, thank you very much. Went back down, because the bridge construction on steel strings and nylon strings is different, because the tension that comes from steel strings is greater than the tension that comes from nylon strings. So I suppose that's the first thing Let's see here. Are you? It snowed last night. Such things have an effect on the furnace, on the humidity, and on instruments. Do load, oh, do load, oh, do remember me. Do load, oh, do load, oh, do remember me. Do load, oh, do load, oh, do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. So, I played nylons. I played my steel string guitar for a long time. I went through a lot of thin picks. I changed my strings from mediums to lights to extra lights because I liked the sound. I liked the feel better. I have gone back and forth with picks many times so that now when I'm playing that kind of a song, I'd use a much thicker. And we've talked here on the live stream several times about the different tone that comes from different picks. Well, it's a similar thing that happens with steel or nylon strings on dulcimers. So here is a steel string dulcimer, and it has that kind of sound that we're probably more used to in the dulcimer world. And I like that. I like the clarity and the crispness that comes from that tone, especially when I'm playing fiddle tunes and things like that. However, just like a part of me wanted a classical guitar, which is what ended up happening. I played steel string for a long time, and then I just hungered for the classical sound, and I went and bought one. And I liked it, except it had some limitations in terms of staying in tune and playing in tune up the neck. And the action was very high and not something I could change. So it, quests like this, it the not complete satisfaction led me to think, I think there's a classical guitar that is in my future. And I went down to Griffin Strings in Palo Alto, California when I lived in San Mateo, and I tuned. Usually when I go in and I'm playing, I end up tuning all the guitars in the room, because when you are a music store, it's really hard to keep all the instruments in tune. So I played everything that was there, and it was my birthday. I went to have fun, have this, and I played every guitar that was there, all the nylon string guitars, and I tuned them, and I liked it, and none of them knew my name. So they all stayed there. Later that year, in December, the music store, B Street Music in San Mateo, was going out of business, and so they had a sale, and I'd had a coupon. So I thought, man, this is a double. This is cool. I'm going to go down there, and I looked at all the gear they had. Nothing really got my attention. Then I thought, I forgot to look at the guitars. I walked back down and went into the room. They had a special room with all the classical guitars on the wall. And I picked this one up, and I started playing it, and it knew my name. And I played everything else in the room. This was not the most expensive one there. I played all the other ones, the ones that were very much more expensive. And this is the one that knew my name. And it's the one that came home with me on my back. And I said to my wife, look what followed me home. But the warm tone and the intonation that came from playing all the way up the neck, having a cutaway, all those things made it something that inspired me to play. Well, Robert Stevens Luthery began working with Aaron O'Rourke to create a fingerstyle mountain dulcimer, and did both nylon and steel string versions. Let me put his link here. Stevens Luthery. And let me put it in. I'll put it into the chat for you. And same pitches. I like the warmth and the roundness of the tone for certain things, like that tune called Eos, which I recorded on my Between the Tracks album on guitar. But thanks to my patrons on Patreon, some said, could you make arrangements for dulcimers for those tunes? And this was one of the first ones I thought, let's see if it can work. And it turns out it can work. So the things that go between guitars and dulcimers continue to do that. But Jim's asking the question, is there a different bridge construction for mountain dulcimers? And so let's go to the first one that I built. This is my Folk Roots kit. Came from Felton, California, with handwritten and mimeographed machine instructions, and I built it. And one of the things you can see right off the bat is that the bridge is at the very tail, and that's where a lot of dulcimer bridges are. When I played my McSpadden, that bridge is almost at the tail. It's about an inch in, and it is compensated. The question was asked about compensation. Yes, compensated for the DAD tuning. This one is compensated in the way that I was able to compensate it, because I built it and I did the carving and made the grooves for the. I can see it looks like this bridge is going to need some help. I had to replace the nut before because it kind of fell apart. And I built this one in 1980. So, 32 years ago. I had to replace that one when it broke. And it looks like this one's getting a little vulnerable. And I'm going to have to do some work on here as well. But the bridge being at the end of the instrument means there is kind of the vibration that happens between the transfer of the string vibration to the instrument is going through the tailpiece to the rest of the instrument. You'll notice that on the Stevens instrument that the bridge is moved in from the end on the body, on the sound board of the instrument, and that makes a difference in tone. Gary Gallier, Kurt Zimmerman was somebody who did that. He was a builder who lived in Indiana. Gary Gallier, Missouri, did this, and his instruments very pronounced curves and everything. But the main thing that affects the tone of what they were doing, what those instruments do, is that the bridge is moved in from the tailpiece onto, and gives it much more of a guitar-like sound. Now, what Robert Stevens has done, you can see this piece of wood here. He's engineered some other things because people have tried nylon strings on steel string bodies and said, I just can't get volume, I can't get tone. And so some of that was, I have to move the body, I have to move the tailpiece, I have to move the bridge onto the soundboard. But the other thing he did was create this eye brace that goes from the head to the tail. And I don't know if you can see let's go in there, if the light will let us see. It's got this sound port on the side, but I don't think I should have a flashlight. There, you can kind of see that this tail piece goes, or this beam that's in the middle of the instrument goes from head to tail. But if I put my fingers in, I can go between that piece and the soundboard. I can go between that piece and the back. because what he's done is build this so the top is not touching anything except the sides and the bridge. There's a slot. I don't know if you can see that very well here. This I could slide. There's a few places where the fretboard itself is attaching, and you can see where there are screws on the back. It is attaching via screws to this internal brace. So the fretboard itself does not stop the vibration of the soundboard, which it does on some instruments, like the one that I built. The fretboard adds weight and impedes the vibration of the soundboard. So by taking that away, there's the possibility of more vibration on the soundboard, because what's happening on the fretboard is going to the brace on the middle, which goes to the tails. That helps some increased vibration. And the other feature on this instrument is you can see these sound holes here. This has got a double back like a Galax instrument does. So this is a deep hole where the screw goes, because the actual bottom of the instrument is lower than the floor on the inside of the instrument. So he's done a lot to engineer this so that the best acoustic tone can come from it. That may not be your cup of tea. It is one of my cups of tea. And so I love having this. Now, he's gone through a couple of different bridge designs. This one's got some carbon fiber here, and it's an adjustable bridge with an Allen wrench, so I could do a little bit of up and down this way so that it compensates well. It also does have a pickup with an end jack, and I can see and hear where the pickup is plugging in. The other thing that people asked about was gauges. And on this instrument, I've got, I think I have, typically I'll have 14, 16, and 28 on this instrument, because this is the one I often play with my fiddling buddy. And kind of like Aaron May likes the meteor strings to stand up with bluegrass players, I like the meteor strings to stand up with a vigorous fiddle player. This one, I've got 22, 10, and these are probably 10s. So a 22 or 24 in the bass and 10s, because I like this one in the DAA tuning. Some people prefer 12s for a DAA tuning. Now, on this one, I've got a 14, but it's a nylon string, and these are flamenco guitar strings. After I got the instrument, I worked on strings, the gauges I liked, the wound string not being a loud one, because I was hearing so much fingerprint on the wound string that it was driving me crazy. So, and I did a lot of talking with Aaron O'Rourke about how he did that and how he worked on finding the strings he wanted. But I went with hard tension flamenco guitar strings. These are labellas because they're black. This one is a 14. This one is a 40. It's very thick. It's the thickest string on the instrument. It's not wound. It's just nylon. But the 40 at this length gives the appropriate tone and balance in terms of tuning and tightness and those kind of things. And this is a 30 that's wound, that's on the bass string. Now, the other complicating thing for me is that I wanted to be able to play in DAC, and I wanted to be able to play in FAC, or DAD, DAA, DAC, and FAC. So I needed to find a string on the bass that would go between D and F, which is a minor third, and not break. The first attempts the bass string couldn't handle all that. And there were some attempts also to, you're not hearing as much finger noise on that bass string as happened on the first ones. We polished using some very, very, very fine sandpaper to kind of take off that ridge. And in the end, I think that did produce some weakness in the string because it didn't like moving back and forth very much. So this is some questions Jamie has. Yes, I like it for finger picking, but I will play. So playing with a pick on a nylon instrument sounds a lot like Willie Nelson because Trigger, his guitar, is a classical guitar that he plays with a flat pick and is plugged in. And so when I'm playing with, and this is my nice thick bluegrass pick, when I play that, I get that I'm channeling, I'm trying to channel that kind of a vibe. But here's my by playing with this is a nice thick suede pick. Dwayne Porterfield in Mountain View, Arkansas made me a bunch of these. And these are the kind of picks that ukulele players might use. They also might use a felt one. And what I hear is I hear pick noise and even thinner pick. I hear more tone, less pick, more tone. And so, yes, you do, Jamie. Just when you thought you were done. So using the softer picks allows you to have more tone and less pick noise. And for me, that is a win. I prefer, unless I'm playing Galax style, then I like my real floppy pick or my feather quill because I want to hear that. It doesn't sound the same on a nylon instrument. And so that's one of the reasons I played both on Sunday. I wanted to do different things, and I wanted to have people have the experience of the different things. Now, I have a lot more vibrato opportunities, which is one of the things I noticed on the nylon string. There's more on these are steel strings bite into your fingers. Nylon strings feel like walking on garden hoses, which neither one is a pleasant experience, right? If you're barefoot and you walk on a garden hose, not a happy thing. But if you walk on a sharp string, not a happy thing. So you have to choose your unhappiness. But because there's more mass, I feel like I have more control of the tone after I pluck. And that's one of those things that I realized I was missing listening to my buddy Vi play his violin. Is he could bow and we hear the tone, but then he could do so much with his fingering hand to play with the tone, to be expressive. And I was missing that. Now, Jim asked the question about nylon strings on hammered dulcimers. The same, bronze extrusion of bronze has been around for a long time, and this is actually much older, coming from Persia, with the bronze, than is the cithra, which is the ancestor of the guitar, which became the sitara, which became the guitar, and quattros and several other instruments. But if I was to use my hammers, and there is somebody who makes hammers. That produces some interesting possibilities. And there is an ad in DPN from someone who makes hammers. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but instead of it being rounded, it's flat so that you could play all three strings at once if you wanted to, or you could angle a little bit to get the outside strings. It's going to be difficult to play the middle string by itself in that way. And anybody who plays hammer dulcimer wants that. Now, whether or not they certainly would not have the decay of the tone on a nylon string is a lot faster than the decay of a tone on a steel string. The time it takes to get the strings to stay in tune when they're nylon is a lot longer than it takes to get the steel strings to stay in tune, because these strings, number one, just like people, don't like being stretched. We don't like being asked to think about new things. We don't like to change our opinions based on someone else's idea. We do like to change our opinions based on our own ideas, but if somebody else suggests it, it almost makes it impossible, right? It's like, no way. It's my idea or nobody's idea. And what, but with the just like people, when we stretch it, it tries to go back to the way it was before. And steel strings are like that, but nylon strings have a longer breaking in period for settling in to be in tune. So when you change your strings on a nylon stringed instrument, it takes longer to get them to settle in. So that's those are the things I've observed. I'm not aware of anybody who's made a hammer dulcimer with nylon strings. And Jim, you're saying you think early Sonateurs had gut strings. I have not heard that from anywhere, but it would not be a surprise that it happened. And then, of all the things, if you got wood and nylon, I mean, it's not going to be nylon; it's going to be gut, which is going to degrade faster over time. Just like the instruments that are found that still exist that are extant in museums like the Albert and Victoria Museum in London, that has this whole room of hammer dulcimers, or the instrument room has the hammers are what gets lost, right? So the question is, did they pluck or hammer? Can't be answered by whether or not there are hammers with the instrument, because do you see any hammers on mine? No, they're over here. I can put them here, but if this gets bumped or moved around, these are what's going to fall off first. So that just, the physical evidence may not answer the question for the to the satisfaction of the jury. but I'm not aware of anybody trying that. People have tried other things like marimba uh, resonant tone woods, like rosewood, or um, what's another one that I've seen? But marimba tone woods are dense pieces of wood that are cut and milled and sanded to be in a particular, to vibrate at a certain pitch, and just like a marimba, low to high. Um, the other thing is but there was somebody in the 80s who built a hammered dulcimer made out of those tone woods that you could play. It was, I can't remember what he called it, and I think he might have been out in the Pacific Northwest somewhere. And then there was somebody who built one with um, metal bars. And there were pianos when I was a child where you'd hit your key and it would pluck a steel rod that would vibrate at a certain pitch. And it was called a toy piano. And there are some more novelty recordings where that is the sound. Actually, it was, golly, was it Rick Fogel? Okay, at Wham Diddle Instruments in Seattle. Once, the movie Once, with Glenn Hansard and I can't remember her name. Um, they used one of those toy pianos as a piece of one of the Hammered Mbira. Yes, that's what it ends up being like. Is like an Mbira, which is the one of the three names for the African thumb piano: Mbira, Sansa, or Kalimba. All different cultures, same instrument, different names. Um, but it's the idea of there's a piece of metal that's vibrating because it's been excited, and when it's laid out like a dulcimer, you can play it with hammers and it's excited by hammers. So that's far afield from nylon versus steel. But I hope you've been able to think about some things. And Jamie, now that you need another instrument, tell Robert I sent you. No, it's a lovely. There are several other builders that every time I post something, they'll say, I need to try that. Um, but the overview of what we did here may give you some ideas of what appears more successful now than might have in the past. But it's time for me to say farewell. And before I go, I want to remind you this weekend is the Baritone Dulcimer Day. This is the first ever event. DJ Hamoris has headed this up, but we're looking at baritone mountain dulcimers all day. It's a day of workshops and concert. DJ, myself, Thomasina Levy, and Larry Conger are all going to be teaching workshops throughout the day. There might be a possibility to get in under the wire for registration if you'd like to do that, but concert tickets are also available. And I'm trying to see where on the concert, everything's on here in Central Time. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're looking at the times. It'll be the closing concert will start at 4:30 my time, 3:30 on the coast, 5:30 in Central, and 6:30 in Eastern time. So tickets are still available for the concert. And if I was to click on there, let's see, register. Here we go. Here's where you can get your concert tickets. So I'll put that all into the chat here, and hope to see you on Saturday. Okay, now let's stop the sharing and wave bye-bye to all the fine people. Thanks for joining me today. Bye.